Now, after months of refusing to provide any real detail on the voice to Parliament, Anthony Albanese fronted the media last week to announce the final wording for the referendum. His announcement was emotional and confirmed the fears of many Australians that the voice to Parliament is no modest request. It is a dangerous demand seeking to permanently entrench racial division into our constitution. It is a change which would see an activist body gain possibly something looking like a veto power over the major decisions made by the elected government. And then there's a potential, obviously, for lawfare to use the courts and unelected, unaccountable judiciary to overrule decisions made by elected representatives. Put simply, the voice is regression disguised as progress. Joining me to discuss the announcement is Research Fellow at the Institute of Public Affairs, John Storey. John, good to have you here. Tell me about what we can expect to see with this education campaign that's being undertaken. Are we going to get equal weighting to the yes and no cases here?
Well, I think this education campaign that the government is putting forward will be about as independent and neutral as our national broadcaster, which means it's going to be thinly veiled pro-voice material. They're saying they will fund a misinformation campaign.
Oh dear.
The E-Safety Commissioner has come out and said we want to target online material that represents hate speech.
Oh dear. So basically, we've already seen Facebook remove things that Jacinta Price has posted. So they're going to ramp that up. So this is going to be suppressing one side of the debate under the guise of eliminating misinformation. I mean, we've seen this before. It never works out well.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, the big tech companies are teaming up with RMIT Fact Check, which are in partnership with the ABC.
Great.
And they've already revealed a strong inclination to treat legitimate criticisms of the voice as misinformation. What I'd like to ask the E-Safety Commissioner is referring to anti-voice proponents as racist, subconsciously racist, nasty eugenicists. Does that represent hate speech?
Was it Marsha Langton who may have said some of those things you've just quoted? I mean, that's the thing. We are having completely different standards applied to the two sides. The yes side can engage in any sort of hysterical descriptions, hyperbole. It's overlooked. The fact-checking units don't worry about it. But if the no side says anything that could possibly be misconstrued by someone somewhere, it gets a really harsh fact check, which is really just a propaganda outfit these days. I mean, this is just really unhealthy, and we need the Liberals to actually come out and be clear on where they stand on this, because they have been essentially running dead. There was a press release comparing the voice to what we've seen in New Zealand. What can we learn from what's happened in New Zealand?
We can learn a lot. New Zealand is a deeply divided country along issues of race. They call it co-governance. It's another word for two nations in one. There was an opinion poll last year. 75% of New Zealanders think that the country is more divided on racial issues than the year before.
Thank you, Jacinta Ardern.
Get the right Jacinta.
Yeah, get the right Jacinta with the D. But this is so shocking because New Zealand really was an example, I think, along with Australia, of racial harmony. It was one of the more tolerant, open, well-functioning societies. And now to see these racial divisions develop in recent years, certainly shouldn't be the road we go down.
Well, it all started in New Zealand with an advisory body. In the 70s, the Waitangi Tribunal was set up as an advisory body. 12 years later, the highest court said the government's got to treat its advice as binding. And then we got Maoris never ceded sovereignty. Then we got Maoris have a veto over certain legislation. Then Maoris get priority to the COVID treatments. It's this is the path we're on. And Anthony Albanese said it himself. In 2020, the tweet is still up on Twitter. He said, we want to follow the New Zealand path. Well, it leads to racial separatism.
best warning we could possibly have very close to home. John Storey, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks, Rita.